Welcome to This Week in Washington for Friday, July the 6th, 2012. Later today, I'll be going over to the White House for the signing of the transportation reauthorization legislation that was approved by Congress last week. I look forward to being there for this important event that signifies the kind of stable funding we'll need for the next several years. I'm very pleased that this legislation gets us out from being in front of all the political issues that are circling around Washington these days, and also that we'll have more opportunity to improve this legislation 2 years from now when it is scheduled to be redone. The legislation, as I said last week, has many aspects to it, some that people will find favorable and some that people will not like. I would like today to focus on one or two of the issues that are in this legislation that I think are really important and valuable to us. First and foremost, as I said, the guaranteed funding for 2 years is in fact an extremely important item and one that provides a level of stability for our programs. Additionally, the funding being computed into the various formulas should allow most of those who participate in the smaller aspects of the transportation program to see an actual increase instead of either a hold harmless or a reduction. These will be welcome opportunities for people facing significant financial crises due to the continuing problem of financing at the state and local level. One of the other things that is in this legislation that is important to our association is that there is language now that provides the Federal Transit Administration the necessary authority to continue grants and programs in areas that are significantly impacted by natural or other kind of disaster events. You may recall that we made this a major priority for our association following the disastrous situation for many of our members after Katrina. At that time, you will recall also that FEMA didn't really do well in dealing with community and public transit agencies, and often local agencies were unable to receive their continuing FTA funding due to conflicts with what emerged under the Stafford Act. This legislation finally changes that and means that in the future, people will not have to go through the same kinds of problems that New Orleans went through, or for that matter, any of our rural or small urban transit systems along the Gulf Coast. I particularly want to thank all of those who worked on this for the last several years, and I'm especially glad that our members on the Gulf Coast, Kevin Coggan in particular, continued to make this an important issue during the last several years. In our legislative efforts, as you know, we built the good parts of our legislative efforts by working with members of our association who had important programs in important communities. I define important by those represented by people on committees that were vital to the transportation reauthorization. So besides mentioning Kevin Coggan today, I do want to mention our distinguished Vice President, Barb Klein, who has always been an important bridge for us to Senator Johnson. And we used that bridge many times in constructing what I think are important benefits to rural transit agencies in this legislation. We'll be again looking at some of the impacts of what's in this bill, and you'll be seeing some things in fast mail that detail it. But I also think it would be good if I did thank Scott Bogren of our staff for all of his hard work on behalf of this legislation. One of the things that Scott did that was really different for us was to be involved with our allies in organized labor and other community groups that supported transportation, especially in the healthcare area. So we're very grateful that Scott's work with those people and individuals built support for our priorities. I'm also very pleased that in the end, we had such good support for our reauthorization goals this time by organized labor. And as you know, the Community Transportation Association did all it could to provide flexibility to larger urban transit systems to prevent the shutting down of services due to financial hardship created by the economic crisis. I'm sorry that the largest transit agencies did not achieve the flexibility that we sought for them, but many of the smaller agencies, especially those transit agencies that will be caught up in the new urbanized areas, will have the benefit of operating assistance and a much more flexible design than we've seen in the last reauthorization bill. So I'm very glad that that's going to take place. And again, I want to thank Scott in particular for all of his hard work in that area. I'm looking forward to perhaps our next communication focusing on the way that we can make the transportation portions of the reauthorization work in conjunction with the upcoming changes in the healthcare program. As I said last week, it appears that the administration will be trying to do all it can to move the expansion of the Medicaid population forward. And this week, I'm sure you saw other stories about how the states will receive 100% of the cost of funding the Medicaid expansion in the next 3 years. Obviously, we think that this will create additional challenges for our members, especially as most of the states seem to opt for managed care models. And it will be important that we continue to try to find ways to help our members operate and offer their services at the most affordable way possible. Those discussions will be continuing, and I hope that we'll have news on ways that we can help people deal with that as it unfolds in the immediate future. This is going to be a long-term challenge for us, however, and at least I think we have some possibility of additional resources flowing to help our members and the communities they serve deal with difficult healthcare challenges, especially the challenges that are created by dialysis. Last week, I wrote to FTA Administrator Rogoff expressing my concerns about some of the issues that are in the new bill and how the administration intends to interpret and administer them. I received a very nice note from Pete asking me to come over and visit about these issues shortly, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I hope to see him this afternoon at the White House as well, and I do appreciate the fact that he's trying to get organized as soon as possible so that we don't have a breakdown by trying to implement some of the changes that occur in this legislation. I hope that all of you had a good 4th of July. It was very hot and very humid here, and we expect to have very hot weather for the next week or so. I'm sure that there will be renewed discussion before this month is over about climate change, and that's a good reminder to us that we need to remind people too of the very positive impact on the environment that public transit provides. All of these issues, I'm sure, will be at the front of discussions as we begin to look forward to putting together again an alliance and a network for the fight that will commence over the reauthorization at the end of this short 2-year period. So thanks. If there are some specific issues you have, please let me know, and I will let you know how it goes at the White House today as I get to go and listen to the President talk about his vision for transportation during the next 2 years. Thanks, have a nice weekend, and I'll be in touch shortly.